Thank you, Dominique. My name is Aleem Mahabir, and today I'll be presenting on the OneCity Explorer, a tool for mapping Jamaica's path to inclusive and integrated cities. Jamaica possesses the highest proportion of urban residents on informal land holdings within the Latin American and Caribbean region, surpassed only by Haiti. And this is not surprising when considering that 350,000 parcels of all occupied land lacks formal registration in the form of ownership documentation. This means that some 20% of the national population, or around 600,000 people, reside in squatter settlements, mostly located in urban areas. And this high degree of urban informality can be explained by the fact that Jamaica's rapid growth in urban population in its capital cities has been predominantly concentrated in unplanned informal settlements that have grown in number and size. This increase in unregulated developments have created a range of social, economic, and spatial challenges that have really deepened inequalities and led to a huge deal of complexities in the urban landscape. The problem now lies in how we measure and characterize these complex urban issues. Urban landscapes are dynamic, they're ever-changing, so it makes it difficult to capture reliable data on these areas. Informal settlements in particular often lack official recognition, and this results in gaps in the data that obscures the needs of large segments of the urban population. Additionally, resource constraints severely limit the ability to conduct household surveys and community-level data collection. So delays in data publication by public authorities is also a frequent issue. And in some cases, entire neighborhoods are literally left off the map in data and reports. These gaps result in a lack of comprehensive data needed to drive proactive policy formulation and the development of integrated urban planning strategies. Now, data from international organizations like the World Bank, UN Habitat, that can be used to fill in these gaps, but the data is typically based on just broad estimates rather than precise localized measurements. And while useful for national comparisons, such data sets lack the granularity needed for community-level insights. This highlights the need to bridge the gap between large-scale generalized data sets and deeply contextual neighborhood-level findings. Accurate, reliable urban data is essential. And when socioeconomic indicators are spatially represented on maps, they provide a powerful visual tool for policymakers, urban planners, and community stakeholders to highlight areas of greatest need, guide resource allocation, and inform targeted interventions. They also facilitate a better understanding of how different urban challenges intersect, offering a structured, multidimensional framework for assessing sustainable development and monitoring progress over time. This is really important in Jamaica, where urban landscapes, socioeconomic conditions are evolving rapidly, making the OneCity Explorer an essential tool. At this point, you may be asking yourself, what exactly is the OneCity Explorer? It's an online, interactive, open access dashboard designed to provide data on 14 key indicators related to urban services and quality of life. These indicators include access to electricity, sanitation, environmental vulnerability, public safety, just to name a few, all disaggregated and mapped at the community level across Jamaica's two major urban regions, the Greater Kingston metropolitan area and Montego Bay. In addition to these individual indicators, we have developed a composite measure called the Urban Integration Index. And by combining all 14 indicators, we calculated a score for each community, enabling us to identify areas most in need of support. The data for this project was sourced from a wide range of local and international partners. Locally, we work with state agencies like the National Water Commission, the National Solid Waste Management Authority, the Jamaica Consolidated Force, and the Jamaica Bankers Association, forming data sharing agreements and collaborative partnerships. Where local data was unavailable, we turned to online repositories such as the Humanitarian Data Exchange, GeoQuery's e-data platform, and the World Bank Data Catalog. In some cases, like the creation of the Regular Tenure Index, we developed data sets in-house at Capri with supervision from subject matter experts internally and on the project's advisory board. And this is the very first time that open access datasets on a variety of urban issues across Jamaica's two largest urban regions have been made available for anyone to view, compare, and download. And while there have been prior attempts to provide this sort of open urban data, the OneCity Explorer offers incredible depth and breadth. It covers not just national statistics, but community-level insights needed for addressing localized challenges. So with this context in mind, let's look into some of the findings for different indicators included with the OneCity Explorer. We're only going to have enough time to focus on 3 indicators in the presentation, but note that there's 12 more we hope you can look into when accessing the platform, including our Urban Integration Index. But for now, let's explore street structure. A street structure was measured using specialized software called space syntax to examine road network connectivity. Essentially, roads with higher connectivity, you can see it in red, typically follow the regular grid-like pattern, but roads with low connectivity, shown in green and blue, adhere to irregular tree-like patterns. As can be shown in the map, planned areas such as central downtown, most of Portmore, and parts of Hellshire exhibited well-connected grid-like street networks that were easily navigable and accessible, in contrast to unplanned areas like Riverton City and Auguston, which showed relatively poor connectivity with irregular tree-like patterns. And these disconnected networks limited access to public transport, key services, and may have also contributed to the relative socioeconomic isolation experienced in these communities. Beyond accessibility, poorly connected streets also have critical safety implications. Find that narrow, irregularly designed streets with very limited open spaces create blind spots, making it much easier for violent acts to occur unnoticed. Also, restricted access can unintentionally foster environments where gangs are able to establish control with little interference, further escalating localized violence. And this finding aligns with our Groundwork for Peace report, which revealed that all violent crimes in Jamaica are concentrated with just 1 kilometer of informal, irregularly planned communities. And mapping street structure helps to explain why violence might disproportionately affect these areas. The OneCity Explorer also examines environmental hazard vulnerability, which is a composite measure that combines 3 key hazards: flood risk, heat island effect, and air pollution. Starting with flood risk, over 50% of Jamaicans' urban communities are located in flood-prone areas, particularly in peripheral and informal settlements. And this can be explained by poor land use planning, encroachment of these areas on wetlands and riverbanks, and improper solid waste disposal. And shockingly, an estimated 25 to 35% of Jamaica's garbage ends up in gullies, obstructing drainage and increasing flood risk even further. Moving on to the heat island effect, there are big differences in average annual temperatures that were observed between urban communities. Densely populated urban areas like downtown Kingston, Portmore, Spanish Town experience much higher temperatures on average due to dense built-up infrastructure and road networks covered by heat-retaining asphalt. With climate change expected to intensify in the future, this finding really highlights the urgent need for cooling strategies, such as creating green spaces, which are currently scarce in these areas. Air quality, measured by levels of particulate matter 2.5 concentrations, the finest air pollutant particles, revealed that industrial zones and densely populated areas suffered from the poorest air quality. Areas like downtown Kingston, along Marcus Garvey Drive, and Port Royal, affected by industrial emissions, vehicle exhaust, and airport activities, showed the highest concentrations of harmful particles. And long-term exposure to particles of this kind can lead to severe health issues, including respiratory diseases, lung cancer, and higher mortality rates. And these findings emphasize the need for health impact assessments in these affected areas, as pointed out by organizations like JET, and efforts to restore ambient air quality. Lastly, we examined civic engagement, which was assessed through 2 primary measures: voter turnout and community engagement levels. Now, community engagement was scored based on whether the area's community development committees was active and the number of community-based organizations present in these areas. And when mapped out, the findings for community engagement were somewhat paradoxical in nature. Typically, most studies demonstrate that civic engagement is correlated with socioeconomic status. with social disorganization theory attributing lower political participation to weak informal social controls and networks in these areas. However, our findings revealed a unique duality, where high levels of civic engagement were observed at both ends of the socioeconomic spectrum. Affluent areas like Barbican and Ligony, and low-income areas like Augustin and Tivoli showed strong levels of civic engagement, both in terms of voter turnout and community activity levels. Overall, our findings reveal that most vulnerable communities face disproportionate impacts across multiple indicators. And these vulnerabilities don't exist in isolation. They are deeply interconnected. For example, poor street connectivity goes beyond limited access to essential services. As we demonstrated, street layouts can influence gang activity that may in turn exacerbate environmental risks like illegal dumping in neglected areas. And this cycle of disconnection may restrict opportunities for civic collaboration and organization in some cases. And these insights highlight the systemic nature of urban challenges. They demonstrate that no issue stands alone. Each is tied to others. Addressing these challenges requires integrated, multidimensional strategies in urban planning. But by combining spatial, socioeconomic, and participatory approaches achievable via the OneCity Explorer, we can foster more inclusive, resilient cities. While the OneCity Explorer is a promising tool, however, it's not perfect. There are still key areas for growth and improvement. The good news is that the Explorer is sustainable, which means that regular updates can be carried out to ensure that the platform continues delivering long-term value and remains relevant. It's expandable so that we can add additional data sets, for example, on road quality, green spaces, and it's going to provide further evidence and insights for users to discover in the future. The data sets themselves are refinable as we build more local partnerships, we gain access to more accurate and up-to-date data, we can further enhance the accuracy and depth of analysis. And the platform is designed to be scalable, with potential to be adapted for other urban regions in Jamaica, across the Caribbean region as well, in order to address broader regional needs. So building on the gaps identified, the OneCity Explorer holds great potential to drive meaningful change in Jamaica's urban planning and policymaking. It can help to bridge the data gap by providing data sets on an assortment of urban issues and quality of life measures that integrate spatial and socioeconomic data. In doing so, stakeholders can be empowered, and it equips them with the data needed for evidence-based decision-making, fostering more inclusive and informed planning. And by using visual tools to pinpoint areas of greatest need, we can strategically allocate resources and focus interventions where they will have the most impact, ensuring these communities are empowered to thrive in the long term. In order to realize this vision, collaboration and innovation are key. So we encourage organizations, especially those listening, to reach out and hopefully partner with us in unlocking the full potential of this tool for transformative urban planning.